So this is a very interesting part here in your career. So you went from being completely on a services side, being completely
Mhm.
external to completely internal. Was there like
Yeah.
culture shock there? Was there like
Yeah.
how different is it for people like listening that maybe are on the agency side, like or people that maybe are that have always worked within a company? Like how would you describe that experience?
Yeah. It's a good question. It was pretty different, I would say. And it's even changed to the different client side companies that I've worked for.
Okay.
But I'll start with the agency, right? Like moving into an agency role, I had already been consulting, doing the survey stuff. So I was pretty comfortable with doing scopes of work and deciding like
Yeah.
these are the analyses we can do based on what your company does. And it had to be very specific to, we know your company, you should pick us to work with you, right? And we're
Yeah.
like, we're pitching and we're giving pricing for what we think we can do, and we're positioning ourselves as experts, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately we are experts in the tools that we're doing and the like the methods that we use to track. But ultimately, it comes down to an agency model where it's like they hired me to do a scope of work as a part of a larger set of channels that we are selling, like paid SEO and analytics.
Right.
Um, so ultimately, it was all about keeping in scope. You were working hourly, tracking your hours, and saying, okay, you needed, you know, a diagnostic to know like, is your tracking working? So we did that and it's deliverable, it's done.
Right.
And then you walk them through it and then they say, great, when can we do this? And it's like, well, depending on how detailed you want to get, it can take some time. Some of it can be done automatically. And there's always that reset period of like, okay, this was the before and now we're tracking the after.
Mhm.
And so just generally teaching the client to understand what it means, how to interpret it, and how to use that to their boss to say, okay, the web traffic I'm driving is valuable and we are improving over time. So I'm essentially just assisting someone else in their job of proving that their web activities are driving value to the bottom line.
So that's on the agency side of
That's on the agency side. And there's a lot of focus on driving more value for the client to essentially lead to another contract. So
right.
it's very focused on transaction, very focused on being seen as an expert.
Now, on the when you go in house, and this is interesting because you had some experience with this client before, like you'd
Mhm.
actually seen them kind of from the agency side. So now you are in house. You've seen the
Yeah.
business from two different sides of it.
Yeah.
What was it like being on the inside?
Yeah. It was very different. I guess the context is when I got hired to the client side, I became the client and we retained that vendor, right?
Yeah.
So I worked with people I knew. I knew how they price. I knew how they work, and I
Mhm.
knew what I wanted, right, from that work. I essentially just wanted more technical resources to implement because, what I found was investment in web analytics people and resources is usually pretty low. It's not the primary data source. This company I went to was very focused on Salesforce leads, and it was not focused.
Sure.
There was no goal for traffic, for conversion rate, for web. So ultimately, the goal was to connect those two data sources and to prove the value of different web activities that we were doing, like testing and
Mhm.
um, just like tracking new websites, making sure we had 100% uptime as much as possible, um, to make sure we had the data we needed to answer any questions we had. There was also a focus. We were starting a new e-commerce side of the business. So essentially, let's make money while we sleep. Um,
Yeah.
and that was a big focus. And it was all Salesforce automation oriented. So that's when I first got exposure to a lot of this, like Salesforce data, and realizing like some companies operate on that model. Like it's all about the leads and they don't care about where it came from aside from the last click. And we all know that it's
Yeah.
more complicated than that. There's multiple touches, there's multiple parties involved. And if you can't tie all those together and essentially prove the value of all those initiatives, some initiatives that are really valuable, that are driving conversion, are going to be overlooked and shut down. And ultimately, what you're left with was a bunch of channels that are good at driving that last click to conversion. And you're going to
Right.
get rid of all your upper funnel stuff around awareness, brand lift, all that stuff.